Okay, I'm back.
Recording in progress.
네. 오케이, 시작하겠습니다. Good afternoon, everyone, and good morning to you. Some of you on Zoom, and maybe good evening somewhere on the other side of the planet. Right, we are at the Cultural Station 284 in Seoul, and as the forum presider, I would like to mention about this historically meaningful venue a little bit. Built in 100 years ago within Japanese colonial period, Old Seoul Station had been center of the traffic network throughout Korea's modernization. 10 years ago, it reopened as Culture Station and has been accommodating exhibitions, performance, and many other cultural events, and has been repositioning itself as a center of the cultural network. So here we are in the center of the station, opening the AA Global Forum Korea. This event is organized as a collaboration between AA and Kia. So to get it started, we'd like to hear a welcoming remark from President of Korea Institute of Architecture, Jayoung Park.
예, 안녕하세요. 오늘 이 오후에 이런 좋은 그 글로벌 포럼, AA 글로벌 포럼에 참석해 주셔서 감사드리고요. 사실 이게 지금 영국의 AA 스쿨 튜터들과 또 관련자들과 함께 하는 그런 회의라서 너무 뜻깊은 것 같고요. 좀 더 이런 원래는 이런 국제적인 포럼이 자주 있어야 되는데 다행히나마 이런 온라인으로 이런 걸 하게 돼서 너무 반갑습니다. 하여튼 참석해 주셔서 감사드리고 즐거운 시간 보내시길 바라겠습니다. Hello, to friends from AA School, UK. I'm the president of Korean Institute of Architects. Welcome you guys, and I really appreciate you guys joining this global forum. And I hope this is going to be very pleasant afternoon. I don't know how over there is the evening or in the morning, but okay. And thanks very much, and enjoy the time. And I will hand over to Vice President of Korean Institute of Architects, Jayoung, and she's going to talk about a little bit more about this program.
Hi, I'm Jayoung. I'm the Vice President of the KIA, Korean Institute of Architects. I'm very glad to be here and convey my greetings to everybody here as the Vice President. I welcome you guys all to participate in AAA Global Forum under the thesis of how will co-housing embrace the new social changes. Co-housing prototype and its implications within lines of KIA's annual event, KIA Convention and Exhibition 2021. This year, 2021, KIA Convention and Exhibition is holding the exhibition to explore co-housing. Actually, in Korea, it's an apartment, and around the world. So the topic of this AA Global Forum brings my interest, everybody's interest, and I was more than glad to support AA Schools Global Forum and Korean AA Alumni. From this forum, I wish to hear and learn all about your architectural ideas and initiatives in a local context, both through online and here. I would like to express my thanks to everybody who participated in this forum now, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Mr. President and the Vice President of the KIA. Since we have Chris, I saw him. Yes, Chris, are you there?
I'm here, Jooeun.
Yes, I didn't expect him to wake up this early because that's 7 o'clock in the morning. So I didn't plan it, but Christopher is the director of the AA Visiting School, and he's in charge of all this global forum. So since you're here, Chris, maybe you can say a word?
Oh, Jooeun, I would absolutely be very, very pleased to say just a very quick word, and that is especially thank you to the Korean Institute of Architects, that we're jointly doing this symposium with. We're very, very grateful to be working with you and delighted. I mean, while I sit in my hotel room in Venice, I really wish I was in Seoul. And I miss Seoul greatly, and I'm very, very pleased to at least be able to be a part of an online event with all of you in Seoul and wish you the very best. And Jooeun, especially to you for putting all of this together on short notice and with an exceptional group of speakers this morning. So I can't wait I'm gonna let everyone just get on with it because I can't wait to hear what everyone has to say.
That's great, thank you, Chris. Right, so maybe it's time for me to introduce myself. My name is Jooeun Sang. I'm the Associate Professor of Yonsei University, and also I've been running a visiting school Seoul for the last 10 years. So it's my great pleasure to be able to welcome you all to this one of the first series of the AA Global Forum. AA Global Forum is a space to learn, share, and discuss architectural ideas and initiatives in a local context, both online and through on-site meetings, lectures, and workshops. And we welcome all of our professionals, students, and friends, as well as AA alumni, members, visiting schools, and partners, and prospective students. Right, my iPad has gone off, so yeah, I've got a short memory, so I've written down a little bit. Right, the global forums are by nature collaborative and help us feel more connected. So today's discussion about the theme co-housing will be an exciting opportunity to understand and learn from each other, from the other side of the world. The past global forums were held in Melbourne, Caribbean, and we are about to start the third global forum in Korea. There are also upcoming global forums Berlin, and also there are visiting schools, including visiting school in December, and many other international programs of AA School, and you are all very welcome to join. Now, if you can share screen to get it started. If you can see the screen of the... 선생님 화면 하나만... 그거 AA 페이지 화면 하나만. Yeah, let me continue. You will see from not this screen, if you go online and visit the AA website, Global Forum, you will see the first event of the AA Global Forum, Korea Alumni Exhibition, Process and Diversity, which is being held on the upper floor of this building. And then that opened well last week thanks to KIA, AA, and our exhibition committees and our sponsors. Now, this is the second but the last but very important global forum now we are about to start. And then this global forum consists of the 2 sessions. And the first session, we have the chair and speakers and panels on site, and also Raul joining us through the Zoom. Right, let me just turn this microphone over to our chair, Professor Jayoung Kim.
Thank you, Professor Sung. Good afternoon, everybody. It's great to be here, and I am delighted and honored to have been invited to participate. I feel both excited and nervous to be the chairperson of the first session. And I was told once that if you feel nervous and excited at the same time, you are doing the right thing. So I am doing the right thing at the right place. It is with great pleasure to be introducing 2 speakers of the first session. First presentation will be Raul Avilla joining us from Spain. And the second one is from Taeyoung Kim, who is sitting right next to me. Now, for those of you who are joining us from Europe, just between you and me, the timing for this conference or forum was initially at 1 p.m. Seoul time, which might have been around 4 a.m. in Europe. So we did our best to put it as late as we can so that you will make the presentation at 7 a.m. in the morning, which will require great passion and enthusiasm in architecture for sure. I have read through briefly the materials that you have sent us, and I am very excited to hear from you what you have been researching and finding out about housing. The big theme of the first session is how will co-housing embrace the new social changes. Interestingly, the 2 speakers will approach from 2 different perspectives, one from spatial and architectural interpretation, and the other from very social perspective. So let me give you the mic, Raul, and the stage is yours. Thank you, Raul. Let's give him a big round of applause.
Good morning. Can you see my screen and listen to me? Yes? Okay, good. Thank you very much. First of all, thank you very much for the invitation. I'm also very excited and nervous to be here and delighted to join the conversation. So I'm going to explain a little bit my research on how housing, and in this case, co-housing and cooperative housing is being part of a social change and architectural change in the city of Barcelona in Spain. In Spain, in 2008, the real estate bubble became a crucial moment in the recent history, becoming the starting point of an economic crisis that lasted more than a decade. Interestingly enough, the economic crisis soon turned into a social and political one, which produced a social outburst on May in 2011 in Madrid. And that happened right in between the Arab Spring and the Occupy movement, Wall Street, which was September the same year. In Spain, and particularly in Barcelona, there is really a little part of the housing which is non-private, which means that there's a high dependency on private housing market. This raised a claim against the commodification of housing and the dispossession of housing in many forms. And on the other hand, on the alienation of housing procurement system in its different forms. In this case, for example, we see here superhero super housing, which is claiming against the commodification of housing and other public services. The interesting bit is that in 2015, this superhero super housing became the mayor of Barcelona. Her name is Ada Colau, and this meant a crucial point for the city since social movements were not read as opposed to the institutions as traditionally they have, but actually ruling the institutions, so actually fostering a kind of public services that they have been claiming when they were part of grassroots movements. On the other hand, if we read how we understand the family as a social unit, how household evolves, and that's how it was understood during most part of the 20th century and also after and before, this actually is contrasted by a reality which is much more complex and in which we see that the nuclear family, the nuclear household, is only in Spain roughly a 30% of household units. So actually we're finding the situation in which both public and private housing procurement is not responding to social needs. So both situations, the social claim and the inability of public and private housing to respond to social needs, produced a growth in cooperative housing, which, unlike other countries, so for example, one could cite Uruguay or to a certain point the States, of course, Scandinavia and Switzerland, Spain has no tradition in cooperative housing. So this is producing a situation in which cooperative housing is questioning design standards, regulations, cultural norms of ownership, management, and even housing typologies. And this is framed by the complexity of not having a tradition, which means that there is not a cultural understanding of what does it mean co-housing and cooperative housing, but on the other hand, the opportunity and the possibility to design a bespoke legislative framework. So if we have a look a little bit to frame what is cooperative housing as opposed to private and public procurements in Spain, there are four main features. First, that the property is kept collective for the cooperative in a form of a legal entity. This prevents further commodification of housing, allows affordability in the long term. Secondly, management is produced by the own cooperative, which are responsible for their own decisions. And this produces the third feature, which is that design is community-led, which means that users and dwellers do not get into the process at the very end of it, but actually from the beginning. And finally, this results in the production of communal forms of living. And this has to do, on the one hand, on shared space in the house, and on the other hand, on the creation and fostering of mutual support networks. So the history of cooperative housing in Barcelona has less than a decade of history. I'm going to go briefly through different case studies. The first two were prototypes that started in 2014. Are inhabited since less than 2 years ago. On the left-hand side, La Borda, which is a cooperative building on top of a public plot. And on the right side, Carrer Princesa, which is a public building refurbished. So in this case, it needs to be noted the importance of the municipal support in order to foster these co-housing and cooperative housing models, which, in my opinion, makes Barcelona a pioneer city in this context in Spain. So Can Bayou, in this case, long story short, is part of an industrial settlement, which had been claimed by grassroots as part of public facilities for many decades. And finally, in 2011, neighborhoods entered the premises and started self-organizing them with the permission of the administration and created a number of working groups in order to address the public facilities, producing them in a self-managed way, which they claim that since they were the ones producing and procuring them, they would be able to do better than actually the administration. One of them was the housing working group, which produced the example of La Borda that I was just mentioning, and in this case, mediated by a team of architects named Raul. So they organized in an assembly. In this case, this is one of the first ones. And cooperative housing, in this case, cannot just be seen as a grassroots response to housing failures, but actually as a political project of democratization and social transformation. And this has a direct impact on how do we understand housing. For example, in this case, dwellers decided to have less private space in their houses in order to foster these shared spaces or collective spaces, given limited resources, and this refers to both budget and space. So this produced a number of spaces which are actually extensions of the house. They make the dwellings bigger than they are actually. Of course, this minimization of the individual living cell or the private space in order to foster shared spaces is not something new in the history of architecture. There are several examples, but I would claim that the distinctive actually feature is that the people that we see in these four images are the same people. So the ones who are deciding how the housing should be are the ones co-designing it with the help of local architect cooperative, which are the ones that self-build part of the building and are the ones inhabiting. So this allows a higher degree of experimentation where dwellers assume the consequences of their decisions and the level of risk they want to get. Architecture reveals as a process and not a product, where there's an innovation in terms of typology, material, social, economic, or managerial terms. One of which, for example, was the design of a greenhouse in La Borda, which was something that couldn't have happened in both private and public procurement. And this is allowed since both ownership and management is collective. And this significantly improves the energetic performance of the building for the benefit of dwellers. And on the other hand, it produces a pedagogical effect in the way users understand the carbon footprint of their own living. On the other hand, the typology in this case is defined by 3 different sizes. So as opposed to what we were looking at before, which is the household composition was determined or predetermined, in this case, this does not happen. So there's the freedom for users and households to interpret these dwellings, and dwellings are defined in relation to the household size and not the composition. And in addition, there are some extra rooms that can shift from one dwelling to the other. So these houses actually are able to increase or decrease over time, allowing a higher degree of adaptability in the future. So that's how the first floor plan looks like. Dwellings are facing south, where the sun comes from, and then north is the place of public utilities and shared spaces. And if you can see this photograph, which is pretty much like a section of the building, we can see how these shared spaces are actually scattered throughout the building, allowing a higher degree of access for all dwellings. So these are a couple of images of the building I took a few weeks ago, and how does the building look like nowadays. You can see the appropriation of the shared spaces by dwellers, and this responds to a high confidence that they have among each other, and this feeling of community that allows the use of the shared space. So after 2014, there were 2 other competitions in 2017 and 2020 by the municipality to foster cooperative housing model. An example of La Palma, which is in Poblenou neighborhood, and another example of Cireres. And in this case, as you can see, both buildings as La Borda are built in wood, which is something new in Spain, and actually it makes construction more expensive. So dwellers decided to build more expensive in order to actually have a lower impact in terms of carbon footprint. So in this case, the building responds to dwellers' concerns, both politically and socially, in relation to the impact of building in our cities. And then the third competition took place in 2020, and in each of them there's a degree on experimentation. So, for example, Sotrac building by La Colle, this is also in Can Batlló, is experimenting on the one hand with satellite rooms, so how 2 rooms can be an extension of all these apartments that we can see here, or how can the floor plan, so each floor be understood as a cluster living in which the entire floor would be kind of a house. And this is a model that has been tested in some other countries successfully, for example, Switzerland, but that we don't have precedents in Spain due to the legislative understanding of what is a home and who composes it. So that's how the building will look like. Again, you can see the greenhouse on the top, wooden construction, and fostering of. The last example I will present is a building that I'm co-author of the design and was awarded as well a first prize in as the one example I showed before. In this case, as in the previous one, it needs to be underscored the role of the active user and the awareness of what does it mean to live in a co-housing with a community. So we wanted to address the concern of that we don't know how we will be living in the future in terms of household composition. So we designed a building which is neutral and it operates as an infrastructure, taking as a starting point Abraken's theory of infill and support. So pretty much the building was delivered to the community as what you can see now. So they could decide the limits of the houses according to a predefined system that was agreed with them in the first meetings. So the building aims to respond to different situations and certain futures. So on the one hand, for example, nuclear household, then extended household in order to address problems as aging population and solitude, and be able to respond to multi-generational living. And on the last example, as cluster living. So the idea is that the building can take all these different forms over time, and not only something that has to be decided at the moment of first inhabitation. And this is possible thanks to, again, the collective property and the collective self-management of the building. So that's one of the potential outcomes of the plan. Like we already envision rooms that can be used in many different ways, and where certain shared spaces are generously appropriated by the dwelling houses. And as in all these co-housing buildings, there's always a certain generosity in the shared spaces. In this case, the rooftop, as the most privileged area of the building, is where actually the community is meant to gather and enjoy together. So to finish, I would like to introduce the research I am developing right now, which is my PhD about the role of architects as mediators and enablers in a disciplinary shift toward community-led architecture. And this, of course, includes cooperative housing and how does this respond to changing social needs. So this will become a toolkit of specific design methods that enable these collaborative architectures to produce specific spatial outcomes resulting from distinctive design processes. I'd like to finish with this quote of Robert Summer, which says, good design becomes meaningless tautology if we consider that man will be reshaped to fit whatever environment he creates. The long-range question is not so much what sort of environment we want, but what sort of man we want. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Raul. Thank you. Wonderful. I'm going to quickly ask the second speaker to continue with her presentation. And after the second presentation, I will invite Professor Jinseok Park, who is the panel of today's discussion. And I will also open the discussion to the audience so that you will be able to share your views and also ask questions to the two speakers of the first session. So let's welcome Ms. Taeyoung Kim. Let's give her a warm welcome.
Hello. Very nice to see you all. I feel greatly honored to be part of the AA Forum today. I wish to share the housing projects for 5 communities that I most cherish. But before that, let me introduce a very quick introduction on the Korean housing market in order for us to be on the same page about the social changes that we are talking about. High-rise apartments make more than 60% of Korean housing market in 2021. As the lending price has been soaring, it is now regarded as one of the easy ways to build assets to individuals and companies alike. The unique long-term rent with lump sum deposit alongside the subscription system for housing application contributed to the perspective. To buy even before construction, it has been standardized to certain types with 3 to 4 types, 3 to 4 bedrooms, 2 toilets, and an LDK layout. Favors to the south orientation, cross ventilation, and the built area ratio of 20% for view and privacy made our dominating urban landscape as the above images. Regardless of the locations, whether in Seoul, or other regions. On the other side, the notion of nuclear family has been rapidly changing with the increase of one-person households in varying forms. The causes are too complex to pinpoint one, from the distrust to the marriage, disagreement on the social roles in a family or society, to the financial instability. It is needless to mention the cost of childcare and education system. But at the same time, we are witnessing the emergence of some needs for a smaller community that can provide meaningful care for each other. Interests in the cooperative housing projects are one of them. First, I want to highlight that the projects are the collaboration work with Hyunjin Kim, Urban Topology, and its network offices. Each project had a community formed in prior to the design stages. All 3 cooperative housing projects are located in the northern parts of Seoul, which you can see in the circle. And the other 2 projects are located in the far south region of Korea. The first community project is called Eunhae Co-Housing, which has been featured in the media many times due to its strong sense of community and a model for a healthy and sustainable social family. The community had been formed for 10 years before they came up with the idea of co-living. They loved traveling and found it a way to create some sense of togetherness. A site they found had a great view to Dobong Mountain, but its floor area ratio was lower than expected. To accommodate 50 residents, they decided to live like travelers, reducing individuals' belongings. For sure, it has a deeper meaning in that they wanted to change everyday routine to the self-organized intellective, creative, physical activities in manifolds as loose and open journeys of individuals and small groups within one community. The site, as you can see on the far left, is narrow and deep on the north-south axis. The core is located in the center, connecting the south and the north units with the skip floors. 4 social families we call tribes in Korean, bujok, are formed out of 22 households, 12 couples, 12 singles, and 14 children based on their common interests. Each tribe occupies a flat and maintains the lowest level of governance for living. Most of the activities take across over the floors. So you can see the skip floors and the different colors indicating 4 tribes and their living rooms in the center surrounding this core. And living rooms reflect the unique characteristics of the tribes. As you can see, 4 living rooms are quite different, as you can see here. And they are open to each other. The basic agreement for this aim is to take off shoes in the entrance of the building and to keep the doors of the flats open. This is a topological diagram connecting 2nd floor, 3rd floor, and the attic floor. So there are 4 tribes flats here. And as you can see, circulations are carefully designed to provide loops, shortcuts, detours, and voids for visual connection and continuity. Constant negotiations of territories are expected to take place and every time, every day, making it unique in ever-changing and voluntary encounters. The community activities include, but are not limited to, and carefully discussed and designed communal spaces and living rooms over 6 floors. Co-dining in the basement, assembly, alternative schools, diverse seminars and group activities, guest stay in the in the ground floor, and cafe, Soho, manga lounge in the attic floors, tea room, garden in the roof garden, north roof promenades. And you can see the many activities that took place in the housing. It was featured in the Brick magazine. I will show the video clips later after this presentation, if we have time. The second project is called 푸른 마을 project. 9 doctors' families got together to live alone together. It's quite different from the community spirit of the first project. They share voluntary medical service, religion, and the interest in the childcare. In the narrow and deep site with a great view towards Bukhan Mountain, the challenge was to accommodate 2 floors of community to community programs, as you can see in the gray area in section on the far right, and 3 floors of 9 flats, of each with 3 bedrooms, LDK, and 2 toilets. 3 floors of 9 flats of each with 3 bedrooms, LDK, and 2 toilets. 3 floors of 9 flats of each with 3 bedrooms, LDK, and 2 toilets. 3 floors of 9 flats of each with 3 bedrooms, LDK, and 2 toilets. They like to overcome the disadvantage of the lower floors and the north or west facing flats by choosing their own neighbors and making them clusters. The neighbors are willing to share the memory of levels, views, orientations, overall environmental qualities. The children will grow up together sharing such memories. So the south flats, which have got good orientation and views, would remain as they are, but in the middle they will do the C-shaped duplex, and the north-facing flat will have scissors duplex. So as you can see in the 3 plan drawings, the unit plans are look quite complicated, as you can see. The construction company called like a circus of reinforced concrete structure. So and the communal spaces make a vertical journey from piloty playground, office assembly daycare in the 2nd floor, and the duplex and flats over the 3 floors. The interior space are all different, depending on the family interior sort of characteristics. So as you can see, scissor duplex, C-shaped duplex in the middle, and south flats, and the top floor flats. And from the ground, the 1st floor, and the roof garden, there are communal spaces across the 5 floors. The 3rd community is called Annyeong in Korean, and meaning be well. 5 families met at the same nursery, wanted to make their children old friends as they grow up. With a new family added, 6 families found a site near Dobong Primary School and decided to have cooperative housing. This community is quite different from the other 2. They are quite new to each other. With a view to Dobong Mountain to the north, the site has an irregular shape, facing a neighbor building to the south. The challenge was to utilize the north part of the site, populating the main access garden, the common terraces, and the roof garden. Their hope for their children's future to be well with your friends, caring each other in this society of prevailing individualism, starts with saying hello in the morning and in the evening, on the way to school or on the way back home. Utilizing the potentials of the site fully, the core occupies the center of a built area, the floor plate, freeing up the perimeter for living. The layout of each flat follows guidelines of the 5 areas, including 2 corners. West areas are populated in the north area. Wet areas are populated in the north areas. The rooms in the northeast or northwest corners are open to Dobong Mountain. The design is still in progress, developing the principles and variations for 6 families of varying lifestyles and family profiles. The design is to keep the very different spatial experience of living in the perimeter, unusual in Korean housing prototypes, even after this community of 6 families agreed to move out in the future. The next one is called Share House Next Gen. Suncheon Municipality selected Next Gen, the activist group for ecology living, as the operator of the 4 shared houses owned and remodeled by Suncheon Municipality. The 4 houses are bought among the empty houses in the neighborhood without clear relationships. We started the design process by communicating with Next Gen, reprogramming the 4 houses with the new connectivity and the continuity. Some features from the development of 30 years were maintained and refreshed, while their spatial characters are revitalized with the new interventions, and as you can see, the new structures, roof, added floors, gardens, roof gardens, and public stairs and promenades. So as you can see in the top, there are the existing house type, the brick structure, and the colors are old features remain, and the others are all added as a remodeling. So the 4 programs from home or urban farming or community salon, ecological school will be connected, and they are under construction now. The last project is about migrating artists. Kundul Artist Group is made of the traditional performance artists called Madanggeuk in Korean, and their supporting organization. They share art education, farming, and gardening, pursuing the integrity as an ecological community. Relocating them from Jinju to Sancheong, they dreamed about a village where they perform and live together. As they work daytime, from working on scripts, costume making, stage production, practices, performances, they wish to have their own time during night in the private settings. So 20 detached houses. So these are the types that we developed for 20 detached houses, 10 container houses, 3 community facilities, including a performance hall. The houses had to be low budget without compromising the qualities. Thus, the scale contrast was another challenge. Further, a balance was required between differentiating artists' houses and their performance spaces, and at the same time integrating them into a collective landscape. The master plan was done prior to the architectural design stage. So the bottom 5 images show a construction of the one house. And we had to use light steel structure and ship fabrication technology made redundant were used to minimize the cost by removing wet construction. Standardization was required for 2-bed and 3-bedroom houses. The subtle shifting of the houses created privacy in each to each, as well as changing views towards Cheonwang Peak, Juri Mountain. Typology of the roofs were studied to achieve the efficiency for structure, cross ventilation, and cost saving, while they fit well into the surrounding landscape. Each house is unique with its changing topography and the relationship with the neighboring houses. The funny thing is, the artists will migrate to the next door every 5 years. Right, so I think we have some time to watch a video clip. Yeah, sorry, I need to stop sharing first. So it will last about 3 minutes, and there were some clips from the mainstream media like SBS, NBC, and EBS. Hope to enjoy. The 4 tribes that I explained earlier are quite different. One tribe, for example, are made of single women, 6 single women, and 2 mothers with 3 children, for example. And they share dining, and this is the construction site. And they also did this polishing job for the roof terrace. And this is the shared community spaces in the basement and the first floor. Diverse activities are being done, like music or philosophy, reading, etc. And also there is a shared community within the community. This is Sancheong, the artist village called Kundo, and this house is around 45 square meters, a two-bedroom house. This is a co-dining space, but they are using this to practice their performance before they have their concert in completion. The challenge was that the artist use this space as a performance, but also they have their private houses as well. So how to show their houses during their performance was a tricky thing. But the good thing is they use very sunset and nighttime for their performance, so the houses disappear during the concert. Very simple system for the house. And the living room and the porch near the dining space provide some views towards Cheonwang Peak. Okay, I think we are getting to the end part now. Thank you for listening, and thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Taeyoung Kim, for your presentation. I would like to invite Professor Park to share his thoughts from the two presentations and any questions you'd like to ask to the two speakers.
Thank you for a great presentation. I quite enjoyed two presentations so far. I think they are very different in terms of the design approach and in terms of, let's say, procurement of the project from the beginning to the completion. Let me start from Professor Kim. I think that at the moment we have great I'm not quite sure great is the right word, but great the time of changing in residential architecture because we really just passed over the industrialization period where we have the parents and the two children is a typical sort of a group of family form to design the architecture, the residential, the project, and we have seen the few projects and that built in the different areas, but they have something in common that they started from the idea of the communities. And started the idea of the sharing, which is quite unfamiliar to the current market. And at the moment, as you all of knows, our residential projects are built by the major construction companies and design companies. And they use the very typical the form of the plan and the scale of the unit. And that's why I think that your project have the great challenges, but I'm not quite sure that has a sustainability because we don't have the right procurement system to support to build more community-driven housing in Korea. So that's maybe the question to you. Then how would you like to maintain your manner of the design for next, I don't know, 5 or 10 years?
I think there was a contrast between the projects that I covered and Raul's projects, because my projects have got very special community, special people who got together from their common interest first. And because the community spirit is all different, you can't make the plans really universal or general, because they are one unique community among like 100 communities. So I don't think we can generalize or make some typical plans for the future community projects. But somehow, if we want to change the general culture about residential housing, then maybe Raul's approach may be valuable to think about. But I think some alternative housing plans, for example, floor plans, can be developed in the later stages, maybe after we accept each other more, embracing each other in our living and sharing a bit more, like opening my living room spaces more or negotiating the boundaries. But these communities that I dealt with are completely different. They have their own consensus, social consensus, and even though they pay different amount money for the same area, they are happy about that. It's not a different concept of justice. Did I answer to your question?
제가 한번 더 할까요?
Yep. Do you have any questions to Raul?
I'm not gonna say it's a typical Spanish approach, but I'm very impressive, Raul. I have to see this one. Okay. Right. I can say the approach you showed today is more or less based on the social, let's say, social movement, and people looks quite comfortable while the working with the architect to deliver their own the housings, and it seems quite open, let's say, open mind. By adding the variety of the sharing space, such as the kitchens and sharing the multipurpose rooms and the co-working commercial areas and the health area, etc., etc. So I'm not quite sure it's working on the basis of some legal system or the planning system though. But it looks like the Spanish have more or less kind of the social structure to support the better residential cultures and residential architecture. So if you like add a little bit more comment about this point, obviously that would be great.
I think that's a very good observation. One of the big challenges that we are facing now is the lack of cultural understanding of co-housing, and this was mentioned in the previous presentation, right? I mean, we tend to think of individual dwellings for an individual mindset, right? So this actually changes, like, what does it mean to share the kitchen? What does it mean to share a workshop space or laundry and any sort of this? So I think despite the case studies that I have shown are quite encouraging, that's not the general rule in Spain. And hopefully it will be 50 years as it has taken in other countries, right? So I think we are looking at the beginning of a long-term process that will change our cities as we know them right now. At least that's my feeling.
Thank you, Raul. I think one of the greatest challenges of being a chairperson of a forum is to keep an eye on the clock. I wish we had more time for more questions and discussions to elaborate on the thoughts that each of us have from the presentations. The time is ticking by, so I'm getting a little bit nervous. However, I would like to open the discussion to the audience. Maybe one question from the audience, if you'd like to take the opportunity.
Hi, my name is Jinseok Kim. I'm a graduate student from AA from 2019. I was also a student of Chris Pierce. Hi, Chris, if you're there. My question, I think it's related to all general architecture, not just co-housing. But from what I saw today, the expression I got is that the Spain project, I mean, it's a European, maybe it's, yeah, I guess it's a European thing. The people are used to living in a building that are longer than their lifespan. They were built before they were born, and the building will remain after they move out. They're used to moving in and out. They're used to sharing furniture and everything. So I guess that building was possible because of that kind of cultural DNA, I guess. Whereas Korea, lifespan of buildings are quite short, maybe 30 years or less. And that's what I saw from project sorry, I forgot your name, but the Korean project. They looked very, very sorry. They looked, I understand they had a very specific purpose for individual interest, but to me, my question is what's going to happen to the building after they move out, after they disease. I don't know what's the lifespan expectancy of the buildings, how it's going to be maintained after the group does not exist anymore, for example. Yeah.
Well, that was the concern of the community as well. Yoonhui community explored how to age as a community because they are in their 30s and 40s, but in the future, they will be in their 50s and 60s. So they are looking at the care system and prepare how to care each other. So for example, the elevator or a common bath with a small, what is it? When you're washing your head, you can have somebody else who can wash your hair. So they are looking into a way to age together as a community. But, you know, the age of our building doesn't last really forever. It's not about the age of the physical building, but more or less it's a social age. But we'll see where some communities will be successful, really aging together, and they may change the structure to fit their changing needs maybe in the future. But like Anyong community, they may move out after their children or grow up. Then I think the floor plan we are looking at can be adopted really easily by other people who don't really care about the community. But still, if we can provide a different spatial experience from a different floor plan, which they have never seen in the market, then that's something we can achieve.
Thank you. And thank you for the question from the audience. It's great to see a more recent graduate from the AA, since I studied there in the last century. Right. Our time is nearly up, so I will wrap up the first session. I really appreciate the two presentations. It seems that when we start to share our lives with other people, our lives are more enriched, not in terms of how we can spend the time, but also in terms of spatial experience. I appreciate the questions from Professor Park also. Thank you very much. When I was discussing with Professor Sung about the theme for the first session, I particularly wanted to include the word embrace. How to embrace the new social changes, or how to embrace different styles of lives, how to embrace the aging society. So all these things were in my mind. And as I work and as I spend time at home, I listen to K-pop. And one of the songs sung by SG Wannabe really struck me, enlightened me in a different way. Because one of the lines, the lyrics goes, it's okay, I'm not going to start to sing. One of the lines goes to say, 그대 품이 나의 집이죠, which translates roughly as your embrace is my home. Now, if you imagine or if you remind yourselves of the hugs or the embrace of your loved ones, you feel at home. And I think it is a great job for all architects to create this environment. It's a wonderful challenge. On that note, I thank you all for your attention and your participation, and I wish you all a great evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Taeyoung Kim, for the lovely words. And your words as a panel, Professor Park and Raul and Professor Taeyoung Kim to share us with your inspiring works, architectural works and the research work. Thank you all to make our session one a great. I think now it's time for us to move on to the session two as a theme of the prototype and its implication. If we can just show the Zoom screen and just to make sure that we have everybody. 제 얼굴은 안 보여주셔도 되고요. Zoom, 그러신 건가요? 네. If we can just check, right, let's have a look. For those three of you who's sitting in front, you can stay there or you can move on to your seats to the audience. That's not a problem. Our second session will be chaired by Christopher, and I'll probably pass before turning over my microphone. I just want to make sure that everybody is enjoying this event. And I want to let people know that this event is also recorded and broadcasted through the YouTube. So maybe if you missed some words or some sentences, maybe you can check our KIA YouTube channel, and then you can always follow up later. And I want to just say that I'm extremely sorry for those who probably joined slightly late because I didn't realize the summertime has finished. So on our poster, this global forum was supposed to be 4 p.m. in Korean time and 8 a.m. London time, which is actually wrong. So it's 7 o'clock in the London time. So maybe there are some people who's joining now thinking that they are early enough to picking up the session. Maybe you can catch up us on the YouTube recorded version. And I do apologize for that again. Yes, if we have, we have Kyosuk Lee, Christopher Pierce, and Yoonhui Lee. We are still checking that AAVS and Vitart. They are joining us from.
I see Jean-Marc and Myrto.
Can you see?
Yeah, they've been here. Yeah, there they are.
Great. Now we have everybody. So I'll pass the microphone over to you, Chris.
Thank you very much. Thanks very much. Thanks. Welcome to everyone. Session 2. I can't compete with K-pop, that's for sure. But being American, I will probably do some very bad pronunciation of names. So if everyone will bear with me. I've got a real great opportunity to host the session with some people who I don't know, but I'm thrilled to meet, which is always a really nice position to be in. So Kyosuk, well, I told you this is where it goes bad because then I have to do the pronunciation. Kyosuk, is that a pretty good pronunciation? Good. Kyosuk Lee has been with MVRDV since 2009 and is going to show us some really, really fine projects out of the office. MarcIbos and Myrto Vitart, is that all right? Is that all right? That's great. I'm absolutely dying to see your work as well. I didn't know the work, and I looked at it in kind of preparing for the session. Absolutely thrilled to see the work that you're going to present to us, and really pleased to have you guys here. Finally, Yoonhui Lee is going to kind of take an overview after the two speakers. Yoonhui, I think you're here. You're here.
Yes.
She's going to get. Oh yeah, that's great. I see your still image. I didn't see your moving image. So
there's a moving image.
Great to have you, Yoonhui. Really nice session. So we'll kick off. We're going to kick off with Kyosuk, and then we'll move on to Jean-Marc and Myrto. And then Yoonhui, if you could give some kind of observations on there too, and maybe start off a conversation amongst us. We've got an hour now. Let's use the full hour and have a good conversation. So Kyosuk, straight over to you. All right.
Okay. Hello. I will try to share the screen from my side. Do you see the screen?
Yes.
My name is Jinseok Lee. Thank you for the invitation, and also congratulations for the opening the exhibition. Today we are talking about the collective housing. It was very impressive, the previous presentation. In MBIDB, we have been developing the collective housing last 30 years. What we present is not typical co-housing in classical sense. It's more like the middle-class housing in the housing market, but we try to bring the certain collectivity. So this four subject on the screen is what we have been focusing on. I will go one by one. Diversity and the collectivity is a quite interesting issue for us to work on, especially in the Dutch context. This is one of the early suburban housing projects that we made in Den Haag. Here, we were asking to ourselves, what is the reason why the people escape from the city center to the suburban context? And then we find out they have all different intention. There are different needs. And we try to invent the very different diverse typology. So one way is that what if we make the one side more collective, the other side more individualistic? And the other way, one side is more introverted, on the other side extroverted. And this is the type that we imagine with the required density. Somehow, one of the collective extroverted type has almost shared the car-free endless garden shared. And then collective introverted 8 or 10 house share their own courtyard. And then the extroverted individual, they are very much exposed to the nature. Or one of the extreme case that introverted individualistic, every house have their own castle, almost like an enclosed garden without revealing any of their property. So this is the variation. You see that in one extreme case that is the best place for the family who has young children, and they don't have any border between the house. They share the entire ground level almost as a playground. And the extreme case of the other side that is completely protected, but they enjoy their own individuality within their garden. This idea was developed also in the three-dimensional way. That's a project in the Silo Dam, built on the water. In this project, we try to bring the many different also needs of the contemporary housing, also invest by the many different housing cooperative. And we bring the almost like 20-25 different housing type according to the new needs of the housing at the time of the Amsterdam. So this is let's say variation. Some of the housing has a duplex, panoramic view to the water, or patio, or accessible by the stair from the ground level. We try to bring the some collective space like a harbor, so people could commute from this housing to the city of Amsterdam. Also, though it's very narrow site, we tried to bring the deck on top of one of the office tenant, so it could be used as a collective plaza. So every weekend there's a yoga activity or other sports activity. This housing is like almost a labyrinth of the all combination of the all different kind of the housing typology. You see the fifth floor plan. It's very individualistic project, but we try to bring the certain way of the collectivity, especially this floor specifically designed for the senior citizen. We intentionally promote the certain space that the residents could have some social, let's say, encountering the neighbors in this space. And then after hand over the building to the neighbors, we find that quite an interesting phenomenon. This space is not what we design. That's how they invent. Since we have many of the duplex housing in the building, we some of the floor we don't need any elevator lobby, and that was the abandoned. And these people try to use that as a like a collective library or a collective gym themselves. So we were thinking this project is quite about the diversity and the, let's say, individual needs, and then it eventually make the, let's say, will to share the space and to operate the space together. This intention is also being researched in the TU Delft. We are operating the studio there. The We Go project is the project with the student, how the individual need could be negotiated and could be also physicalized in the collective housing in the academical sense. Second subject that we were focusing on is about the collective space as a void in the collective housing that we say porosity. First project in Amsterdam, you could see that the 5 tower make the one volume. So this housing itself becoming the room. So you could see that between the towers, and they are connected, they make a frame to the view to the outside and nature and the city. And we bring the series of the collective space. In this case, we have the playground for the kindergarten. You see the chandelier there. This is the, let's say, kitchen space. There are living room. So we call that this is the housing for the 200 unit, but they living in a house. Another example in the Madrid, we try to use this porosity, the room, for the view, to look over the city and to meet each other in this fantastic view. Another one also in the Madrid, in the Celosia. In this case, we try to make the intimate, let's say, void space that where the 1, 2, 3, 4 unit could meet each other. We didn't define the function. They could invent their own program in that garden, in the shared garden. This is how it look like around the courtyard. They bring the ventilation and the daylight also to the courtyard. Another thing in the Lyon, in France, in this case, we try to bring the street shared by the housing and also try to bring the view to the water. You could see that these are the street lifted because there's a parking below. And this is almost like a semi-public space that where the collective, the event, and then the social encountering could happen. This subject of the porosity also deeply researched in the TU Delft with the name of the porosity. Then here we had also academical setting to experiment how the tower, residential tower, could have a void space, many different way to bring the many different the possibility, and also challenging the typical tower typology, how it could have more air. A third subject is how the green space could be used as a collectivity. This is one of the projects that we are finalizing in Amsterdam, Jaudas. We call that as a valley because we inspired by the natural valley. So we were thinking, what if the people living in the valley, inside of the valley, and they share the forest, they share the mountain. Oh, typical floor plan is quite simple. It's typical 3 residential tower, but every unit have its own balcony toward the garden. So it's collective forest, as I emphasize. So this is a view from one of your balcony to your neighbor. And then we try to do something more. It's very, comparing with the previous project, it's quite a luxurious housing. That's what the Dutch housing market is happening now. We try to bring the certain collectivity also with the neighbor side. It was a very hard process with the client, but the logic, we try to open the, let's say, podium more, let's say, the welcoming to the surrounding. So one of the way that we did is, okay, let people climb over the let's say here, but this will ensure the, let's say, the commercial success of their tenants. And by this way, this valley becoming almost like a public destination, and where we share we share this collective feeling to the city. This building is almost finalized, more than this image. Soon will be published. Another project in France that we are a bit more experimental. What if this housing itself becoming the greenhouse with the shared space? Greenhouse was needed because it's next to train station to block the noise. And that this protect from the noise. You could see that the stack of the different housing to make almost like one continuous climatized communal space next to each other to embrace the, let's say, new way of the sharing. And then the green will be maintained by themselves. That becoming the ultimate, let's say, the binding factor of the community. Last, the category that we are working on is mixed use. How the housing could meet with the other function to bring the new collectivity, not only within the housing, how to bring the collectivity to the city. In the Netherlands, it's quite a huge discussion how to bring the population who escaped to the suburban area, like our first project, to bring back to the city and show the intensified, let's say, lifestyle that never imagined in the most creative way. This was the also pilot project of Rotterdam, how public facility like the market could be shared with the housing together. In the competition, it was a very simple request, make the housing on top of the public market. But we bring the different idea, what if the market is continue from outside to the in, and what if the housing cover the space? And then we thought maybe structurally difficult, what if there is an arch? And then we think, okay, the elevator engineers say it's not possible. We modify the form. We even modify the form, have more commercial space in the ground level. So we make the 120-meter deep market. It is a section. This property is shared by the almost like 130 shops in the first 2 levels and the 200 housing on top. And then they are connected. The penthouse is on the bridge of the building. So this is how it looks from the side. It looks like the typical apartment flat, but inside you see the market, people coming in, and then all these windows are window from your living room, and so this is a view from your living room, and this is a view from your bedroom. So it make the collective space together. It even celebrates the new food culture, emerging food culture in the Rotterdam that was not common. Many different shops with intimacy, but you could feel that the collective feeling that this building brings to the Rotterdam is how it look like when it's busy. Yeah, this is an overview. Yeah, that was the, let's say, the message from us, MBIDB, how we interpreted the, let's say, middle class, upper middle class, the typical housing that is demanding in the housing market in Europe, how we bring the, let's say, new collectivity to the project in different way. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Kyosuk. Thank you for showing us the wide range of parts. They're big projects. I mean, they're big projects. I was thinking, Kyosuk, while you were speaking, what was the smallest project you showed us? How many people roughly?
Oh, usually, I mean, it's a average size of the project I show is a 200 unit and the 500 people. That's the, let's say, common size in the Netherlands. Also, many cities in France and also in Spain, not in Paris, but this is a good size, typical size of market demand. Maybe in Korea it's different. Huh? They usually end up with the 2,000 housing.
2,000.
Yeah, so
these are small by Korean standards, in fact.
Yeah.
Petite.
Yeah.
Nice. Maybe there's a little bit of fuel for a conversation as we move forward through the session. Kyosuk, thank you very, very much. Well appreciated. Thank you for being here. I want to move over to Jean-Marc and Myrto now, and let the two of you take over and show us some work as well. So welcome very much to both of you and look forward to hearing it.
Hello. Do you hear us?
Yes.
Yes. Il faudrait le mettre en plus grand. Just a minute.
Non, mais c'est...
Non, il faut mettre en grand écran.
Non.
Just a minute.
C'est bon.
It's okay.
Yes. Good.
Sorry. Well, thank
All
you
right, good.
for inviting us. We are very happy to share this moment with you. We are talking to you about some collective houses we did. First of all, maybe a little precision about the condition we work here in France. Not only in France, I would say in major cities around the globe, the question today arises about density and accessibility. The influx of workers over the past few decades had created needs for housing that is struggling to be met. In France, this phenomenon takes its roots after the war and led to the construction in the 50s and 60s and even 70s of large collective housing complexes on the outskirts of the cities to mainly accommodate migrant people, migrant workers for reconstructions, and also the French from Algeria. This public policy which consists in regrouping a kind of people in a specific place lead to real social segregation over time. The exclusion of an entire population from city centers continues nowadays and even intensifies, but for different reasons, for other reasons. The housing market is now largely in private hands, and the scarcity of housing in the city centers drives up prices. It is the law of the market. This means that housing in city centers like Paris, for example, has become inaccessible to a whole fringe of the population. Population move to find housing in distant suburbs, which is a lot of problems to solve. Mainly remain in town young executives, rich people, and tourists. The whole working population has left the city, but also many young population, young families with children who prefer to have a little house and a little garden in the suburbs. Probably the crisis of the COVID will make it more and more real. Cities are thus dramatically losing diversity. We do not have the means to act on prices of housing, but we have the possibility of developing strategies to offer residents better living conditions that encourage them to stay in town. For example, by optimizing living space, by promoting mixed uses, by offering generous private outdoor places, by developing shared space that promotes sociability, by enhancing public space. This sometimes means circumventing the rules and always upsetting the habits. Let us now present two realizations. One is a social one, which is an old one, one of our first words, and the other is a new one, which is private dwellings.
Hello. I would like to present you the two operations we did. The first one is in Nîmes, and it's a whole operation. It's a whole construction made in 1985 with Jean Nouvel. We were a young architect at this time, and we did this project with him. And we are in the south of France, and the idea of this project was beautiful apartments. It's big apartments, and for that. We developed specific devices to make apartments and construction bigger than you can do with money which is provided in the social housing at this epoch. And the idea was to make a very rationalistic building in terms of construction. You see the plane, walls every 5 meters on 12 meters deep. And you have on one side a corridor to enter in the apartments. And on the other side, it's a huge balcony or terrace where you can take your dinner or your lunch when it's nice weather. And the other idea was to do that, is to keep the building very rough. I mean to use, for example, industrialized products as you see on the elevation corrugated aluminum panel, for example, for the facade, or to use also different materials as the door you see making the facade are from fire station. You use this kind of doors generally in fire station, and we take this product for making the elevation of the building. You see the interior. It's a concrete wall, slab, concrete in slab in concrete, and it's all very rough. There is no paint except some intervention of different artists who made some painting in the apartments. Just a night view. That's also a thing we want to do on this project at this time. It's to give a night view of the apartments. This one is another operation we do 30 years later, and it's totally different. The first one was public, and when you work with private promoters, it's not possible to have money more than they want to give you. It means you have to be very strict on the scheme they want to give you, and so the private this private operation is 200 dwellings with 5,000 square meters of retail and 1,000 parking underneath the building for a public and private parking lot. And the idea is not the same as the first project we show. The idea is that it was impossible to change, in fact, the program or in terms of surface of apartment. So we did something different with some similar receipt, I think, to the structure, for example. The building is in concrete, and we have a very strict structure from the base to the top on 15 levels. You see the section from the parking to the top of the building. There is a structure very simple and very very continuous. In continuity, the walls are in continuity to minimize the expenses of structure, and to give something more, we try to extend the apartments on the outside. On the outside, in 2 levels, I could say. The first one, the private, and a common sort of huge deck which cover the commercial area on the 2 first floor of the building, and the deck is a share space overlooking on one side the river in the Seine, and on the other side the park, which structure the new neighborhood of this part of the suburb. you see also how the public space enter in the building with a large, huge canopy of at the ground floor, and in private way we extend the apartments with this kind of device, which is a large terrace that you can modulate in winter or in summer. You can open or you can close with glass wall, and it makes an extra surface to the apartments. And the other thing is to use also on the materials. You see the ceiling, which is a polish aluminium, which make a reflection with the glass and so on, and make the light enter in the surface of the apartment, which in a certain way extend the apartments to the outside. You see the balcony. You see the view on the river, and each apartment have a large balcony and a view on the river.
I would say the advantage of this proposal is that the surface that can be closed with the glass is not heated and then doesn't enter into the calculation of the land charges. Therefore, it does not increase the budget of the people. It is additional surface, which cost is only the cost of the construction. So it's a way to make the intern surface bigger at a very low cost.
And just to conclude the presentation on this building, is that this kind of device is possible because, once again, because of the rationalization of the construction. And that's the way we think we have to do to give more surface or more volume or more private or shared spaces. Thank you.
Jean-Marc and Myrto, thank you very, very much. It was nice to see a project in real fine detail. Can I ask you, I might have missed it when you all were talking, how many units were in this last project that you showed us?
200.
200. Okay, good. I'm trying to gauge myself scale-wise a little bit as we work
and
through
for
this.
the first one, it's 114.
Good. Thank you, Jean-Marc.
200 in France is quite big.
It is. That's why I was enjoying a little while ago with Kyosuk when it was 500, but in Korean terms that was quite small, because similarly coming from London, it's also, I mean, even the 500's a pretty big number. So I was interested in the scale, and also that you all were not working at such a different scale to some of the projects that Kyosuk showed us as well. You know, there was a similarity of scale between a few of them. Yoonhee, I wonder if I don't invite you to kind of jump in now, maybe make some observations and kick off a little bit of a conversation.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Perfectly.
Okay. Well, I found that the social housing, especially, it's quite different from continent, the Asia, especially in Korea. Developed through like a really unique way, and then somehow it really relates to the real estate value in Korea. And then typically in Korean culture, we like to own the apartment, so we call flat. Okay, so with that sense, people really take seriously about the buying a apartment, and then the real estate value is quite important for the people. And because of that, I found that even social housing is quite small portion among the whole market. Okay, now with the Seoul, city of Seoul, proposed like making a law by 2017, I assume, or 2015, about the collective housing, social housing. Okay, before that we didn't have much of a social housing, but that's why it's pretty new culture in Korea. And one of the I'm gonna ask you, Kyosuk, and then Yonsei Vitart, both of you. In the collective housing, you're emphasizing on the publicness, right? So it's not just a unit, but then shared public program is quite important. Unit, I think most of architects, they are quite good designer, but then the success of the public housing, I observe that how you operate the public program. Okay, who's gonna be responsible for the public program space? Okay, and in Korea, when we launched the competition for the social housing, the program is not yet set up. So later on, they after the design, later on they added the who's gonna maintain or the who's gonna operate the public program area. So I'm gonna ask you, Kyosuk, and then Yonsei Vitart. In France or in the Netherlands, what stage you propose or the finalize the public program? Or the second question is, do we need to specify public program from the beginning, or would you just provide the space and then make it a typology, and then later on you're making a decision about who's going to operate the public program? Okay, that's my two questions.
Should I answer first, Yoonhee?
Yes.
Okay, I think we need just one thing to clarify. In the first session, we talk about the co-housing that is built in the collectively, and I think what I present and what Ibos and Vitart present is the, let's say, middle class housing that emphasize the shared space. In Netherlands, I also want to emphasize one of the policy. We say 40-40-20 policy, meaning that however big or small apartments we make or the developer make, 40% supposed to be social housing or land housing. And then 40% they can do, the municipality define the certain size. And 20% they can do whatever they want. So that's the condition. So it means that there is already idea of the social cohesion, or let's say social mix within a housing. And then
so it's for the any kind of middle class housing in the Netherlands?
Any of the housing development in Rotterdam or Amsterdam, in many major city in the Netherlands. That was the very common, because also our French presenter also mentioned that housing price going up very high last 10 years. It's becoming very strict in the Netherlands. It's 4-4-2. And then having said that, yes.
Kyosuk, can I just intervene really quickly to get a little clarification on that 40-40-20? Yeah. At what point does that kick in? Is it over 50 units? At what point does that kind of become policy?
I think it's any size of the collective housing. You're supposed to have it. And of course, I say that 200 units and 500 people, that's the, let's say, usual size, because that is also the size fit to the urban block of the city of the Rotterdam and Amsterdam. At the same time, we say 500 people is the size of the community that people could recognize each other. That's one of the German anthropologist Victor Papanek was mentioning in his book. So 500 as a critical number. So then it's becoming the let's say the community, and then about the requirement of the public space or communal space, we usually try to solve it by integrating into the circulation space. We are a bit hesitating to define the separate space because usually it ends up with dead space. So how to make it visible, how to activate while you are moving around the, let's say, collective the corridor space. For us, that's the key, and how to make it visible from outside the city. So the communal space is not only to be shared by the people who is living there, by physically, but it could be also visually shared from the outside. So you bring the collective gesture to the city. That's the one thing. And I know the Korean collective housing also have a regulation. For instance, like LH or SH corporation have this. They have a minimum requirement of the collective space. I afraid sometimes this constraint make the collective space as a dead space. So we need to be a bit more flexible, but maybe not focus on the providing some amount of space. That was the concern from the last decade, how to activate in a creative way. That's what we need to focus. That's how I suggest. Thank you.
Well, in France, we have also that kind of rules. We have about 25% of each operation of social housing in each, comment on dit opération? Construction. When you have a kind of, if you have 200 dwellings, you have 25%, which is social. At the beginning, some decades ago, social housing was led by public services, and that was very nice because, as Jean-Marc showed you before with Nemosus, that permits to have some kind of experimental houses. So you could try some experiences that now are very difficult to try because as we are in private hands, they have their own schema, and it's very difficult to go outside of that. So now social houses are designed in the same way than private ones. So you have less experience to prove. Another thing is that when you do some kind of big collective blocks, now private clients want to close it from the public space. So you get kind of gated communities, and the example of the second project which we show you was designed to be crossed from everywhere because it was a big commercial center on the ground, so you could cross it, but you could also cross the internal gardens and courtyard we imagine, which are very beautiful in the inside, but now they block it and you can't cross it because they don't want it. That's a big problem because every block of dwellings are becoming kind of private places. So we try to act on that, and sometimes we get it, and sometimes it's difficult.
I would like to add something about the policy of the dwellings in France, because there is a difference between the policy as it's written in the text and the reality. For example, you have some cities who prefer to pay penalty and reduce the number of social housing included in the operation of construction of dwellings, because they doesn't want to make a sort of mix of population, and they try to reduce this percentage of 25%, because at the end of the year they are not at the sum of the good percentage, and they prefer to pay instead of making a real policy of integrity of the different kind of people in the city.
And now we have also another kind of experiences that are coming, because for example, in Paris, but I don't know you in Seoul maybe, but in Paris, quite half of the price of an apartment is about impôt, comment on dit? Taxes. Half of the price. It's why, for example, we show how we did exterior places that you can close because they are out of charges. But it's a lot of charges because the cost of the land is very expensive. So they are now trying another kind of way to do. They are starting that experience. I don't know what it will, if it will get. It consists in the public, the public acquiert le terrain, comment on dit? Buy the land, and they sell only the construction. Means for half of the price you can live in the place. It's a very long time. You can stay maybe all your life, but you don't. The ground don't belongs to you, so you pay half of the price. So that it's to try to make a middle class come back to the cities. I don't know if you have that kind of experiences in your place. What happened?
Yes, I was seeing if Yoonhui was there because I was interested in her maybe answering the question from the perspective of particularly from Seoul and also the Asian perspective, because I'm conscious of the fact that I don't want it to become too Eurocentric a conversation, and I think that question in relation to Seoul is an interesting one.
Mm-hmm. So here in Korea, well, it's mixed. It's the government or the SHLH that Kyosuk mentioned, there is a part of a housing market is operated by the government, but at the same time there are a lot of private sector owned by the private sector. So I think it's in a way that but again, the more and more of a diverse operation system are testing now. So the land are owned by the government, but then again, the development is operated by the private sector. So one of the problems in Korea for the past years is, in a way, we are in a high population, but then again, it's not a big country. So the housing operation development was quite the homogeneous. We didn't have a time to test it, the different systems. But and now we are into this kind of a transition. That's why today's forum is happening. So it has been like the last 5 years. I think we're in just a little bit of different battleground of how to provide quality housing in a way.
Yes, I guess, Yoonhui, the quality housing is a very good one, because it kind of brings me to one question, which I certainly wanted to pose to everyone in this panel. And that while we're kind of talking about the inclusivity and the kind of different social classes inhabiting the project, on the back of COP26, where we've just talked about sustainability, the planet, the materials, and everything else, I wondered if any of you had reflections on the impact of the projects on the environment and how that was being mitigated. And you're talking to someone who comes from a background. I spent years working with Skidmore, Owings, and Merrill, doing skyscrapers and never drawing a tree in my life. And I like looking at these projects that kind of seem to at least have some visual engagement with the environment. We're talking public and private, but it's also a very physical engagement with the environment. And I just wondered, I guess maybe in the same conversation of that 40-40-20, Kyosuk, or the 25-75 that you were both talking about, Jean-Marc and Myrto, if there's some kind of advancement in terms of the environmental sensibility about these projects and how that's developing. I mean, Kyosuk, for example, what I would say is in your presentation, in some ways for me, it got greener and greener, and the building began to break down more and more. And I think similarly, Jean-Marc and Myrto, when you were speaking, you weren't necessarily always talking about the environment as a physical thing, but in talking about the light, the sun, the warmth from that, you were talking about the environment engaging with the project in another way. And I just wondered, kind of for both of you, how this idea of the impact of architecture on the environment, how these projects maybe engaged with that question.
Yeah, I think this very, sorry, please go first. Okay, I think this is very relevant and very important question also for the global responsibility. In general, the demand for the, let's say, ecological design is very high, even in the middle class housing market in the Netherlands. So the Belly project that we have, the 3 tower with a green facade. Actually, we were surprised at how having green terrace becoming quite fancy in the housing market, more than we expected. So it's becoming the new trend, but at the same time, there are many requests about how to do the construction in terms of the circular economy, how to recycle, how to circulate the material in good way. I think that's quite something that we are at the moment working on. And the one very important thing, when we talk about the mixed use, the last category that I mentioned is quite the key, because it's about reducing the mobility, reducing the distance from your home to the working place, to the city center. So that's something invisible, but that will enhance the many of the conditions that our globe encountering now at the moment.
Thank you, Kyosuk. I wonder, Jean-Marc and Myrto, did you want to add anything?
Here we are. I would say we from always like to use few things, few material, the less we can. We use just what we need. And this is also a kind of way to we like also materials that are, we like well constructed, bien construit, comme on dit, well constructed buildings. We are very careful with the quality of the materials. So we think for us, architecture is not to throw away 10 years after. It's for a long time. And we like our building could integrate a way of changing with time, but in a good way. So we are very careful with all that. We like the sun to enter large spaces. We can ventilé, comme on dit. We have windows in a part and the other one. You can do ventilation. We can make the sun comes inside in the winter. Look at this image we have here. And on the summer, it's protected by balconies. So we are very careful with very simple things and if you see our building with the last building we show with the two glasses, you can open one, close the other one, open both of one, close both of them. So you make like a coat in winter, and in some summertime, you can open ventilate. So very few, very simple, very few material, very not show, but just what we need. We are very, in this way, very preoccupied.
I would like to just also to say, I think in France maybe it's different in the other countries, Netherlands or Korea. We have a real problem with regulation, because this problem of sustainability in France is only based on a ratio. And the operation at the end, it's to be in the ratio, and that's it. And what we try to do, it's to take in account, I could say, the pleasure of living, the pleasure of using outside space, private space, or shared spaces. Anyway, but there is no other way for the moment in France when you do a project, even if you do an equipment, public equipment, it's also the same thing.
Boxes.
You have to make a very you have to do just to fill the ratio. That's it.
Yes.
And it's not enough to make a real good building, to have a pleasure of living, and so on.
And to make that kind of building, we show you the last one, for example, which is private client. You must take advantage of all you can to offer that. If you want big windows, they don't want, because it's more expensive. So you have to take the money somewhere. So you imagine structures very rational. You try by any way to rationaliser, comme on dit, to make rational things so that you can get a little money to pay big classes, to pay terraces, which is not included in the prices. Yeah. So that for us is the way also to be careful with the, and we like the porosity also much more with the landscape, with the city also. We like to be able to share from one interior to one exterior, to make more to extend the users, while you manage the privacy, but you also extend and you make communications between things.
Yes, I think that's one thing that I enjoyed the most about this session, is actually not the differences between the work that we saw, but much more the shared qualities, and porosity was definitely one of them, unquestionably, and also kind of private and public. I think, goodness, the two of you have, or the three of you, the four of you, in fact, have exceeded my expectations in a way. I knew this was going to be good. I knew I was going to get to see some really nice projects, and you all have exceeded my expectations. So I'm hugely grateful for that. I know Jooeun is going to come on in a second and say, Chris, stop talking and let's move on. So I want to just take this moment. Kyosuk, thank you so much. Nice to have you within the orbit of the AA as well. Jean-Marc and Myrto, similarly, and Yoonhee. I'm not sure if any of you have been to the AA before or have ever been a part of the school before, but it's wonderful to have you here now and for you to just be a part of the AA as well. So thank you all very, very much. Jooeun, I think you're here somewhere, aren't you?
Yes, I'm here, Chris.
That's great. So Jooeun, I pass it right back over to you to do some final words, okay?
Thank you, Chris, and then thank you all, Kyosuk and Ibos and Vitart and Yoonhee for sharing your works and also sharing your ideas about all the policies. And I think the 2-hour session is far too short to tackle this very basic but very important theme of the architectural space. But I think we certainly has tackled and maybe we certainly started this dialogue and hope we can continue maybe in our next event, I don't know, wherever that would be. So despite our time differences and the geographical distance, and also our language differences, I think this global forum went quite well. So I would like to thank everyone who stayed with us on this venue and watching us on YouTube. I really appreciate your time and your participation. And also I would like to thank the staff of the KIA to make this online and offline event so smooth. I think that's amazing. So thank you, everybody. And before I say goodbye, I want to ask all of you on screen now to stay there so that we can have a photo. And this is quite a Korean style. That at the end of the event, we want to take a photo of us and you together. So have a good evening and have a good day or for those of you who are in Europe. Thank you very much. 감사합니다.
감사합니다. Thank you.
Thank you.
오케이, 앞으로 저기 1세션에 하셨던 선생님들 앞으로 오셔서 우리 같이 사진 찍으시재요.
재원아 일로 와. 우리나라에서 이렇게